Welcome to Pera's Playbook. This is your host, Alex Pera. Let's open up our playbook and see who our guest is. Please enjoy. Welcome to episode 206 of Pera's Playbook. Today we're joined by Petrella. He's an actor, producer, comedian, puppeteer, all kinds of different stuff. Most of you probably know him as Randy from A Christmas Story, but he's acted in many other roles. He's currently producing a Jaws documentary. We're going to dive into his whole career, obviously A Christmas Story, but some of the stuff he's working on now and some of the other stuff he's done. So, Ian, thanks for joining. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great, and thanks for having me. So
Yeah, of course.
beautiful day here in Sacramento, California.
I wish I could say the same for Michigan. It's like dreary, cloudy, and like misty, drizzly, so it's not
You're
great.
getting close to fall, so I used to
Yeah.
live in the Midwest for 10 years, so I know like right now it would not
Oh
be
yeah.
not a cloud in the sky, but that's California. We just don't have the same seasons that everybody does.
Yeah,
So
we've had a few days in the upper 60s where it's like, okay, you can feel that cool fall breeze starting to creep in, and there's some trees already where the leaves are starting to change. It's like, wait a second, it's not even September. Come on.
the cicadas start coming out.
Yeah.
You get
I
those?
Not really up here in Michigan.
Okay.
Um, But like I have cousins that live in a suburb of Chicago, and if you go down there towards the end of summer, it's just maddening how loud that noise can be.
Because I lived in Ohio for 10 years. And yeah, they have them, but you just get used to them. Like it's just white noise.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you have to live there to get used to it. When you visit, it's like, I could never get used to this.
Oh
It's
no, you turn into like Captain Kirk. He's like,
yeah. It's
going
like in the Blues Brothers. How often does the train go by? So often you don't notice.
exactly.
I love fall though. Fall's a great time of year.
Me too. And living in the Midwest, I got to experience what a real fall looks like. Here, yeah, we get fall, but it's not the same as.
Yeah.
I get what everybody says, like California doesn't have seasons, and we got warm and hot.
Yeah. Unless you go up to the mountains, right? Then you could go skiing or
Yeah, if you
something.
go to like if you go to Arrowhead, or what's the other one? Oh, I forgot the name of it. Ooh, but yeah, you go up into the mountains. That's where that's where it snows
Yeah.
actually, and you do get all those seasons. It's very beautiful up there. So we do have very beautiful. We're not just all beach and desert.
Yeah. No, there's obviously benefits to all the different climates. I think if I had to change one thing about the Midwest and like Michigan, I'd shorten winter a little bit. I like all the seasons, but I could do with a shorter winter, you
Yeah.
know?
One cool thing I will say about California, and especially like Southern California, and even parts of Northern California as well. But if you like to surf and ski, there are times of the year you can do those two things in one day. So you can go surfing in the morning, and then you can drive up and go snowboarding, in the afternoon. Because it's only like
Yeah.
a couple hour drive to get to like
And
a
that's crazy.
yeah. So if you're one of those like extreme, adrenaline junkies like from Point Break, you can.
Well, we can't necessarily do that in Michigan.
Wow,
I remember being in high or middle school. We went to like a 3-day camp as sixth grade, and it was in the end of May, and it snowed. We had winter jackets on. Like we had to do like canoeing, and they were worried that if we flipped our canoes, people would get hypothermia. But it was like at the end of May. We were getting ready to go into summer after school.
that's okay. That's extreme for Michigan. I never would have thought that Michigan would be that cold. I figured,
Yeah,
Minnesota,
yeah.
like
Every once in a while, you get a random.
one of the funny, and probably being from Michigan, I mean, you have snow days, like
Oh
where
yeah,
it's just so they got to close the school down.
oh yeah.
Here in California, we had what we call heat days. Like it would just be too hot to go to school because we
That's
didn't have air
crazy.
conditioners in our classrooms. So they would just call up and say, this is Granada Hills High, just letting you know that we are declaring this a heat day. It is too hot to go to school, so you may stay home. And we're like, we're going to the beach.
Yeah. Well, of course, why not?
Yeah,
Yeah, you probably had the same idea though as 100,000 other people, hey, to go to the beach.
yeah, we would just take, we'd all have a field trip and just go to the beach and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's dive into your career.
Okay, cool.
IMDb says that you started acting at 3 years old.
That is correct. Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of people don't remember everything they did when they were that young. What is the first acting role that you can like actually distinctly remember?
My first acting role that I can remember was actually my first acting role, which
Okay.
was Jiff peanut butter. And it was my first audition, and I nailed my first audition at 3 years old. And so I did Jiff peanut butter, and I remember it because all I was supposed to do was take the slice of bread and take a big bite out of the slice of bread. And for some reason or another, I had this idea that don't take too big of a bite because we're going to need this for the rest of the shots. I'm 3.
So conserving your resources.
Being conservative, with eating this because I know we're probably gonna have to do more takes. And the director's like, no, 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 Ian, I want to see a big bite, big bite. I'm like, okay, big bite. So finally, they just had to convince me just take a big bite, and like they would like show me like we have more. Just
It's okay.
okay, all right, good, cut, we got it, get them out of here. But that was my first audition, and yeah, I was about 3 years old.
So was that your parents that, got you into that or other family
Um,
members or
I had an aunt who worked for the agency, and she it was a children's agency, Herb Tannen, and at the time, I mean, they handled every child actor that you ever saw in the '80s. So, I mean, they had me, Jerry Suprian from Small Wonder, who played Jamie Lawson, Danny Pintaro from Who's the Boss, Drew Barrymore, Soleil Moon Frye, Punky Brewster, Barrett Oliver, who was in Neverending Story and Cocoon. I mean, so many child actors they had. We were part of that group, and so my aunt said, you know what? Yeah, he's cute. He's got personality. Bring him down. Who knows? Because in LA, for for a lot of people, when you're a kid, a lot of times, you join Little League, you take up sports. Well, in LA, acting is just one more thing that you can do. So it's almost kind of like joining a Little League team. It's almost
yeah.
the same thing. Your parents are like, let's get him into something. And so acting is, and plus there's money involved. So you can do this and make a little money. And
Yeah.
that's how it just kind of started. And I just kind of grew into it. So even as I was getting older, I realized, oh, okay, I'm an actor now, and you're doing a commercial. So it wasn't, you know, it was fun, but the only difference is you have to learn how to be professional and adult at a very early age, and sometimes that can be hard to do, for a kid, because you're just precocious and you want to get in trouble, and you don't have a lot of patience for a lot of things. So you get a lot of talking tos, like from or from somebody on the set, like, and sometimes directors do not have patience with kids, and they will just straight up tell you, look, you need to do this now. You know, you can't do that nowadays with kids.
Right.
It's like, no, they would tell you, you want to work again? Get back on the set. Very cathartic, you
Yeah.
know.
So were you mostly doing commercial work when you started, just various commercials?
I did a lot of commercials when I was young. That was like the number one thing. And it wasn't until, and I'm sure this is, what you wanted to segue into, Chips was my first
Yep.
television. That was the first time I did theatrical television. Everything was just commercials before that. And that was really exciting because I was a fan of Chips. So I got to be on the show. So that was cool. And I got to meet Eric Estrada. I don't know if you saw the episode.
I don't know. I should have looked it up. Sometimes you can find that like if you there's so many different
I
there's
think I
like the
found it
Chips
on,
wiki and people like will like tag the episode that actors have been
yeah.
in. Do you know what
I think
season it was in?
I don't know the exact season, but I can tell you it's when Larry Wilcox left and Ponch got his new partner.
Okay.
It was the first episode of that, and it was the drunk driving episode. So I know I can't remember it has a title to it, but it's the one where he is dating this girl, and I don't want to, spoiler alert, she gets killed by a drunk driver. So it's where Ponch just like falls in love, and then and it was all about it was a don't drink and drive episode, is what it was.
Yeah.
And I played a little boy. I was standing on the side of the road, and I'm holding a dog, and I have a sign on my back that says "Space Puppies for Sale." And so Ponch and his new partner, I forgot the guy's name, um, shows up, and he's like, hey kid, come here. So I walk up and I sold Ponch this dog, and that was it. So, and it
Yeah.
was really cool to be on the show. Eric Estrada was really super nice. The other guy was amazing too. And that was the other thing is like, because you're expecting to see Larry Wilcox, and there's this new,
Right.
and I was like, oh, okay, so he was really cool. But those are the only two that I met. I didn't meet, you know, any of the other actors. But years later, and this was back in 2023, we were doing a signing at Chiller for a Christmas Story, and Eric Estrada was there doing an appearance for Chips. And so I broke away and I said, I gotta go meet him. I have to go meet him. So I went over and I saw him, and I introduced myself and I said, Mr. Estrada, I just want, does this ring a bell? Space Puppies for Sale. And he's like, no, not really. I go, it's okay. I did an episode with you, and I was the little boy that sold you the dog, and it was the drunk driving episode. And I mean, the man's done so many episodes. He's like, okay, let me think. He's like, yeah, I think I vaguely remember that. I go, that was me. He's like, oh, cool, nice to see you, nice to meet you, and everything. And I was wearing this flannel, and he's looking at it. He's like, that's a really nice flannel. Where'd you get that? I'm like, I got it at Walmart. He's like, Walmart? Man, that's really nice. I should go. I wanted to just give it to him.
Here, take the shirt off my back. I'll
Here.
take it off right now.
It was like a hoodie flannel, so it wasn't going to be walking around like bare chested. But I should have just given it to him. I still have it. So,
Well, now
but
you're never gonna get rid of it.
no, eBay touched by Eric Estrada. Let me tell you something about Eric Estrada. I don't know how old he is. I mean, he's got to be like what, in his 70s now.
Yeah, he's got to be mid to late 70s.
That man still looks good.
He does.
Yeah.
He's aged
I
very
don't know.
well.
I don't want to say. I mean, maybe he had some work done, but whatever he's doing, man, he still looks good for his age.
Yeah,
I
he
can't.
still looks like Punch, right? If you like, for people who watch the show, if you see a picture of him, you're like, hey, it's just a little bit older.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw him at the airport afterwards, and people still recognize, like kids were like Ponch and going up and taking pictures with him and everything. So yeah,
Yeah,
good for him.
yeah. He always looked like, I always just imagined like he's got to be a cool guy because he has such a flamboyant personality on the show. And sometimes it's really, I mean, obviously, if you're a really good actor, you can do a lot of things, but sometimes it's hard to fake it that much if that's not your true personality.
Right. No, I think he, like I said, I mean, he was nice to me, but oftentimes when, you're doing these things and you get a chance to meet celebrities, if I drop who I am, then they tend to be more nicer about it.
Right.
A lot easier for me to approach a celebrity because there are a lot of people, a lot of celebrities, if I tell them I'm, in a Christmas Story, they actually really love the movie. So they're very
Yeah.
respectful. It's like, oh my God, I really love that movie. Nice to meet you as well. Um, but And but no, I think, he was definitely a nice guy. And when I saw him at the airport, anybody that wanted to take a picture, he was there. What was really weird is he showed up at the airport in his uniform. So I guess he had
Really?
just left the show and he was still dressed in his highway patrol uniform because he was wearing that at Chiller.
That's
So,
cool.
so it's like, of course we recognize you as
Right,
Bond.
yeah. You're not
You know,
hiding here.
yeah, he's got the badge, he's got the boots, and he's.
That's awesome.
I
Yeah, I can't even imagine sitting in the airport, look over, and you're like doing a double take. Wait, whoa, is that
I couldn't
Ponch?
wear the snowsuit. It just wouldn't. I don't think it would work.
Yeah, yeah. You probably wouldn't want to in California. You might get a little too warm.
No.
Well, let's use this as our segue into A Christmas Story. I mean, it
Okay.
is probably one of the most recognizable and most thought of Christmas films. Some people would say, what's the best Christmas movie ever? Other people would say, well, it's top 10, right? Everyone's got an opinion. But
Yeah.
regardless, it's one of the most recognizable. If you just walked up to a random person on the street and said, name one Christmas movie, it's going to be one of the ones that's named the most because so many people grew up watching it with TBS having it on 24 hours from Christmas Eve to Christmas. Like, there's just so many people that are familiar with the movie. And it's
Yeah.
definitely a classic.
I mean, I never like to, say anything because it's coming from, obviously I have a different view and it's a biased view. Say, oh yeah, it's the best Christmas movie ever. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna let you say that. I'll let everybody else say that.
Yeah.
I've heard people say they don't like it, and which is fine. It's a movie.
Right.
You could
Everyone's got
either
an opinion.
You're allowed to like it, you're allowed to love it, you're allowed to hate it. It's perfectly fine. I don't get offended if somebody tells me that, they don't like it. I might ask why. Like, what didn't you like about it? And then if they tell me why, it's like, okay, fair enough. But I know definitely the one thing. There's a couple of reasons I think why so many people do like this movie. Is number one, it's definitely a generational marker.
Yeah.
Uh, Gen X and obviously boomers loved it, and then you have the I guess you call them like the World War II generation. They love it too because that was their childhood. They grew up in that time. Then of course, boomers like my parents love it because they can also relate. It's a very relatable movie for a lot of people, and that's what it is. We do have a bigger fan base, I would say, like in the Midwest. When you go to the Midwest, yeah, a lot of people from Midwest love the movie because that's where it took place.
Yeah.
They recognize the snow and all that, and changing a tire with their dad in the snow, you know. And everybody had a dad like that. We all learned to cuss from our dads. So my dad didn't have a furnace. He had a Chevy truck that, I used to help him with. And that's where, I would hear the words. So, and, um, but it's one of those movies that I think is so, a lot of people relate to it. And so when they don't look up to us, like you would like a Han Solo or a Luke Skywalker, that's somebody you look up to and go, that's who I want to be in life. They look at us and say, I was either you or I knew somebody like you or you were like me. And that was my childhood. And I wanted something for Christmas so bad. And I think so when we meet our fans, um, like I always say, I don't have fans. I'm just in a movie that has fans. So I that's how I try to approach it. And so when we do meet people, it's kind of like they almost feel like they already know us because they
Yeah.
relate to that character. So you have to keep that in mind. So it is kind of weird. You'll see somebody you've never met in your entire life go, "Hey," and you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, "Hi, what's your name?" You know?
Who are you?
Yeah. So you just have to, think about it that way. And yeah, but
Did you have any idea when you were a kid and you were filming it that it would grow to be the popularity level that it is today?
um, I mean, when you make a movie, and that's pretty much for any movie, you always hope that it's going to become a success. You always hope that everybody's going to love it. But I think when they were making the film, um, that wasn't really so much in the back of their heads. Bob Clark, who directed this movie, he really wanted to make this movie. He wanted to make this movie from a long, long time ago. Like he was a college student and he was driving around in his car, and Gene Shepard had a radio show and was talking this story. I think it was the flagpole scene that Shepard was talking about on the radio about Flick and sticking his tongue. Bob heard this and it's like, I got to finish listening to this story. And he was supposed to go on a date. So he just drove around until, because this was like in, like late 60s or like early 70s. So there wasn't like, Pandora, like, oh, save that. I'll listen to it later. You know, you have to listen to this now. And that's when he decided, he's like, I want to make this a movie. So, I mean, this idea of his is he's had it since, like the late 60s, early 70s that he wanted to make this movie. He just needed the right time to do it and the money. So that's when he got into, making films, and he did Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and Black Christmas and, Murder by Decree. But it wasn't until he made Porky's. And so he made Porky's, which was a huge hit. And so the studios were like, we want you to do Porky's too. He said, okay, but I got to make this one movie called The Christmas Story first. So without Porky's, we would not have a Christmas story.
That's crazy. You're the second Bob Clark connection on the show. I had Jack Mulcahy, who's an actor. He was in Porky's 1 and
Okay.
2, and he lived next door to, I don't know, one of Bob's associate producers or some connection of Bob's. So he
Okay.
met Bob when he was really young, and Bob was like, whenever I get the money to make Porky's, this kid's gonna be in my movie. Years later, Jack ends up being one of the kids, the ensemble in Porky's 1
Yeah.
and 2. He later went on to do Brothers McMullen and some other stuff, but it's kind of funny that I had him on earlier and now I'm talking to you. So Porky's kind of made it possible to do this, and I talked to him before I talked to you, and that's kind of random.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people get very shocked because a lot of our fan base, as far as Christmas Story is concerned, probably wouldn't like Porky's.
No, no, not family friendly, not.
A lot of pearl clutching. Like, what? Like, yeah, tits and ass, and then we got Christmas Story. So,
Right. It is kind of funny to think that. I mean, I had no idea until Jack said that Bob did Christmas. I had no idea that they were the same. I would have never guessed that you've got this
people don't.
teenage sex comedy, and then you've
Right.
got this wholesome Christmas movie. You would never guess the same guy.
When you think about it, I mean, he really, it's unfortunate he's not with us today. We lost him back in 2006, and it's unfortunate because he really was kind of a pioneer in the whole like genres. Now, maybe he didn't develop it, but he definitely developed movies that catapulted and started. One of the stories I heard, I'd really love to find this out, is after he was making Black Christmas, which is a horror movie about a guy that murders during Christmas. And he had another director friend and asked him and said, you're going to do a sequel to it. He says, nah, I kind of want to get out of that genre. I don't want to do slashers. I want to do something else. And his director friend said, "Man, it would be really cool if you did it on like another holiday." He's like, "I mean, would you mind if I did it?" He's like, "Yeah, go ahead. Do it." And that friend of his, like I said, I really want to find out if this is true. I've heard multiple stories. His friend was John Carpenter.
I knew you were gonna say. I just had a feeling in my head. I was like, wait, Halloween. We got that's where we're
How
going.
you should do it where it takes place on Halloween.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to do it. So I'm not saying Bob Clark created Halloween,
Right.
definitely, put the spark.
Seeing it. Yeah.
And
That's
because
cool. If it's true, that's definitely really cool.
right. And um he also kind of helped start the genre of the raunchy teenage comedy. which is Porky's. But I mean,
Hmm.
at the time, I mean, you had in the 80s at that time, there were so many of those movies that were also coming out. But he was part of that movement, starting that
Hmm.
raunchy teenage. And then with A Christmas Story, it really was one of the first comedic Christmas movies. Like a lot of Christmas movies before that, you had, Miracle on 42nd Street or 34th Street. Sorry if I got that wrong. Life. But those movies weren't really comedy. There was maybe a
No,
comedy
more
element,
serious.
right? But there was a more serious message as far as like appreciating, Christmas, where this was, I think one of the first comedy Christmas movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's why maybe it didn't really do that well at first because people thought, oh, I'm going to go see a nice Christmas movie. And here it is, a leg lamp and your bully up and cussing. And, it was almost like South Park, a very early version of South Park. And so that kind of, kicked off a genre because now that's all you get are like comedic Christmas movies. Those are the
Hmm.
most popular. You have Elf and you have Christmas Vacation and
Right. Jingle all the way and
so really kind of, you know, helped a genre, start. And like I said, it's really too bad that he's not here to enjoy all this. We just
yeah.
had the 40th anniversary and, you know, we did a sequel. I don't know if anybody saw it. If you did, thank you. If you didn't, yeah, maybe check it out. Give it a go. If you liked it, thank you. If you didn't like it, I understand why you didn't like it. I've had that discussion with people as well. So,
Yeah. I personally have not seen it, and not because I don't have an interest. I don't think it came like this. The age of streaming services. It's like, oh, what service? Oh, I don't have that service. You just gotta
right.
like wait and hope that it's on something. I would
It,
love to see it, you
it's
know?
you can rent it on YouTube. I think you can do that because that's how I make money off of it. Um, but it's on HBO Max
Yeah,
and it does come on cable. They were thinking about trying to incorporate it with the 24-hour marathon.
that'd be cool.
That would be cool because then I would be making money
Right?
because they don't get money from the marathon. So if
Really?
they, no, no, none of us
Why
do.
not?
Contracts just it wasn't negotiated at the time, and there's not
That's
really.
too bad.
I mean, we could fight and try and get some money, but
Yeah.
it's going to cost us so much money to try and do it because you're going to have to go up against lawyers of Warner Brothers, and we don't have Warner Brothers lawyers.
Right.
Um, so it's just best to like, you know, let's just try and make another one and see if
Yeah, and we'll see if we can make money off of that one.
maybe we can. Let's see if we can sort of sandwich a couple, screenings of it into the marathon. That would be kind of good. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, Randy has he's got so many memorable scenes, right? I mean, everyone knows the snowsuit
Right.
and the dinner when you eat like a piggy who's mommy's little piggy and
Yeah.
right, the screaming at Santa, Christmas morning, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine,
It's funny because Randy doesn't really have a whole lot of lines in that movie.
No.
He does, but his whole. I always call Randy. Randy was like the R2D2 of that movie. Just kind of was kind of just beeped and bopped around, and he would scream and cry and fall down, and that's it. That was his part, you know. So, there are memorable lines that he has.
Yeah,
Obviously,
Daddy's gonna kill Randy.
there is, but I enjoy that. That's what he was. You know,
Yeah, you got to pout and whine and get paid to do it.
just more physical acting is what it was than it.
Yeah.
Than having to memorize. I didn't have to really memorize anything, which was good. So they would just tell me my lines on the spot. You're going to say this today. Cool, got it. Now cry, laugh, fall down, and So,
Yeah. How long was filming for you?
total it was 11 weeks.
Okay.
Shot for 11 weeks, which isn't bad, for a movie, but I think they pretty much knew exactly what they want. So there wasn't like a whole lot of rewriting on, the script was pretty much done. This is what we're doing. I know the only thing that, I mean, there were a couple of things that were, they would do and say, okay, we don't really have anything set for what's going to happen. So let's just figure it out. Like the whole flagpole scene. In the script, it just says flick sticks tongue to pole. So all that whole banter, that was all kind of worked out with Bob and the kids and coming up with all the dialogue. And, it was almost kind of more, they kind of almost shot it more, Spinal Tap style. It's like, okay, let's just come up with what we're going to do and then let's just roll with it and we'll get a couple takes and like the ones we want. So there would be like a line. It's like, okay, we do need to say, I triple dog dare you. So we need to get to that point. And that's what they would do. I know when Darren, was fighting with the furnace and the gibberish, he was actually supposed to use real profanity. That was one of the things. There were supposed to be profanity in that. But what happened is in Cleveland and Higbee's, Cleveland was the first place to be like, yeah, you can shoot here. We'll let you shoot here. And Higbee's was like more than happy to have you shoot here. We'll leave up all our Christmas decorations. This will be great advertising for us. But the guy who read the script, I guess was like the vice president, said, I just don't like the language. If you could change the language, I'll let you do it. And they said, okay, which to me personally, I think makes it more funny.
Yeah.
That, you hear this old man and the language is, the
I know.
friggle fraggle, but
Yeah, lib bloom lab bloom, just nonsense.
we just, yeah. So,
Yeah,
and
I do. I think it's hard not to start laughing when he does that. You
Mhm.
know, it would be a little less funny if he was just cussing all the things we hear all on a regular basis.
Right. Oh, here's something that a lot of people don't know and is a good piece of trivia is Darren wasn't the first choice.
Really, who was?
Jack Nicholson wanted to do it because he read the script, he liked it, he wanted to do it, but he wanted too much money, and it would,
Oh,
but that would have been crazy. It would have been pretty wild. Sort
yeah.
of brings a whole new meaning to Daddy's gonna get Ralph because
I know.
right after The Shining.
Yeah. See, no, seeing the movie so many times with Darren, I could not picture Nicholson doing it. Like it just doesn't fit right now in my mind.
It definitely would have been, and I think if Jack would have done it, it probably would have hit a different height because he was such a big name. I mean, we had Melinda, she was still pretty big because she was just coming out of, Close Encounters. That was her, that was a huge movie. So she was, a major star for this. She was definitely one of the big names. Um, Darren really wanted to do it. He loved the idea. He had a really strong vested interest into doing this movie. So for him, it wasn't just, well, I'll show up on the set and do it. He was like, he would definitely talk with Bob and, talk about scenes and how about we do this and this, had a lot of input, with him and even Gene. And Gene Shepard was on the set a lot. So I got to meet him. And that's one of the things is, yes, he was very nice. He was very kind to me. And, but it's unfortunate at the time I didn't really know who he was. I knew he was the guy who wrote the book that this was the movie based on, but I didn't know who Gene Shepard really was. And he had this whole legacy before. And it wasn't until later on in life that I realized, oh, wow, that's who this guy is? Holy. Hmm. And unfortunately, I never got a chance to see him after that, and say, dude, I had no idea you were this guy. this is even better now. But I
Yeah,
do have the book In God We Trust, and I do have it autographed by him, so that's pretty cool.
that is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Darren, I mean, he does a wonderful job. And I think when you find out about that, right, there's a lot of different movies and TV shows and different people that try to get roles and it said, well, this role almost went to Tom Hanks. And you think like, well, what if Tom Hanks would have been in that movie instead of whoever? But it's hard to picture it once you see it the way it is because that's reality to you now. It's that whoever that person that's normal.
No, and I think, if he would have done it, I think it still would have been good. It definitely would have been slightly different
Hmm.
because I think it would have been a Jack Nicholson movie. Let's put it that way. Where this really is, it's a Peter Billingsley movie, is what it is,
Yeah.
the main character. And he still would have been, the main character, but a lot of focus would have been put on
Yeah, he
Jack,
would have stole some thunder.
and not intentionally.
No, no.
Because
The star status just happens though.
Wilson doesn't steal thunder; he just is thunder.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
he doesn't. He's got his own thunder. He doesn't need to steal anybody's thunder. He'll just walk on the set, be in a movie. I love Jack Nicholson. I see everything that he's in, and he's just magic in every single movie.
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic.
Oh
I love I love A Few Good Men. He's fantastic. He's just that well all of the acting in that movie is fantastic, but yeah, he's just
The Departed. I mean, anything that.
yeah, I mean, he's such a legendary one of the greats. Again, people can argue that all day long. Oh, who's better than who? But you can just say he's one of the greats.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite scene from the movie? Not even one that you were in, but just a favorite scene from the movie.
I do have a favorite scene, and yes, it is one that I'm in, but that's not why it's my favorite. My favorite scene is hands down the whole Higby scene because it's that's the one thing about this movie that I always say. And this is what I think is the difference between this movie and the sequel that we did. Is this movie there were different everything had like its own scene. Like you can take the Higby scene out of that movie and play it separately, and it's its own scene. And it's just this madcap cross between Mad Magazine and Norman Rockwell, and that whole scene just sits well just together. From beginning and end. When they get to the line, and you got the kid with the goggles.
I like the Wizard of Oz.
And it's just bitter and hate kids and the elves, Patty and Drew, who I still, I still see them all the time. We're still good,
That's awesome.
and they just did a fabulous job. And I'm not that much. I mean, I sit on his lap, I scream, I get thrown down a slide. That's all I'm in. But just in Jeff Gillen, who was one of Bob's best friends and worked on multiple projects with Bob. He was in Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. He was the crazy guy on the phone in Black Christmas. So a lot of people don't know that. Like he wasn't just some random actor. That was his good friend. And I'm friends with his son Phil. So I've remained contact. And that scene is just a wonderful scene. So if the movie comes on, I will watch that scene just because I just the brilliance of how it was shot and how it was done is
Yeah.
so great. But yeah, that's probably I'd say my favorite scene. So
My favorite scene, and it's not a big scene, it's not a long scene, but it's at the end of the movie. I just think it's a beautiful shot. I just love it. At the end of the movie where they're sitting with the Christmas tree and you've got the glow of the lights and the snow is falling down and then it cuts to the credits. It's my favorite scene of the whole movie. I just absolutely love that shot. I think it's just a wonderful way to close the movie and then the music starts and you've got this beautiful and maybe it's because I can relate to that having Michigan Christmases sitting Christmas is over. You've got the glow of the tree and a beautiful snowfall. And maybe that's why I just connect and love that scene so much. But I just think it's a beautiful shot.
yeah, and that was all done in the studio.
That's crazy.
Oh, In fact, if you go, because at the end of the movie, you see the house and you see
Yeah.
this, that's all fake. That's not real snow. That's fire foam, and then fire foam on the roof, and then there's somebody with potato shavings and a fan doing this the whole time. None of that was real snow.
That
And
looks pretty good.
the scene where Ralphie looks out, that's all fake too.
Yeah.
Goes down because it was cold in Cleveland, but it didn't snow. So
Yeah.
we were walking to school, no snow. That's all fake. And
It's pretty convincing. I mean, it's not bad.
but I mean, like you said, you watched it and said, I I can relate. Like, really? You had potato flakes being
Well, at least it's not as bad as some of the Hallmark movies. You look at that fake snow they've got, and you're like, oh,
I was
oh
just all
gosh.
some guy with
Uh,
a mouse and clicking, okay, it needs to snow.
yeah.
How's that look? Good, convincing. Okay, yeah, you're not paying me enough to do this, so that's all you're getting. You know.
Yeah, I know. So I mean, like I said, I haven't seen the sequel, so I can't say much about it. But I mean, what getting into that? I mean, that had to be kind of cool to jump back into that role so many years later.
It was very bizarre. Um, One of the things I always say is I'm glad I'm not a betting man because if somebody would have said, I'll bet you a certain amount of money that in 2022 you're going to make a sequel with the whole cast. And I said, you know what? You're wrong. I'm going to bet all my money that we won't because I never thought we would. And a friend of mine um, sent me a link to the Hollywood Reporter, and this was in 2022, in January of 2022. It said Peter Billingsley is starting production on a sequel to A Christmas Story. And I'm like, okay, all right, fine. I heard nothing about it. I didn't know anything about it. And I just said, good luck, bro. Hope it works out. And it said it was going to start production in February, and this was January that I received it. So naturally, you're like, yeah, everything's all taken care of. Nobody's going to call you. They're already getting ready to film. They got all their ducks ready to go. And then in February, I get a call from somebody over at Warner Brothers and says, "Hey, I'm one of the production coordinators, and we want to talk to you about being in the sequel." Like, yeah, okay, sure. So I had to audition for it, believe it or not.
That's
I
crazy.
sent me lines. I had to learn lines in video in self tape and send in an audition tape. And the only reason why to their is because they hadn't seen me acting in anything. So they just wanted to see, can he do it? You know, and
Yeah.
if not, we'll call Jonah Hill and he can play Randy. I would not. I would. That would be cool if I'd be honored if Jonah Hill took over. I like Jonah Hill, and considering that Vince Vaughn was attached to this, that could have probably happened. But I sent in my tape. The director Clay Kiedis contacted me on Zoom because he was already in Bulgaria, and he said, "I just want to let you know you got the part." I'm like, thank you. So, and then I flew out to Bulgaria to go be in this movie.
So you guys filmed it in Bulgaria?
Yeah, we did.
How
And one
come?
is because of it's just a lot cheaper to shoot overseas. And a lot of people wanted to know, well, why didn't you shoot at the house in Cleveland? And one of the main reasons why is because yes, the house is there. If you haven't gone to it, go to it, check it out. I'm still good friends with everybody at the house, and it's a wonderful place to visit. And I go there often, so you might see me. In fact, I'm probably going to be there November 28th. So stop on by at the Christmas Story House and say hi to me and Patty, Drew, and whoever else is going to be there. So if you want to meet the elves, please do. They're very nice. They're not mean. They're very nice. So, but because it's a museum now and it's a tourist attraction and everything has been landscaped, so there's a beautiful yard to walk around. They would have to come in and tear all that up and make it look like it was in the 70s. And then when you're done, they would have to pay to put all that back. And that's a lot of money. Where in Bulgaria, what they did is they just rebuilt that whole block. The house looks exactly like the house in Cleveland. Though all the apartments and houses that are nearby, they built everything pretty much to scale. And I know that area very well. So when I walked onto the set to see it, I said, you felt like you were back in Cleveland, Ohio, and you're in the middle of Bulgaria. So that's one of the reasons why we had to film there, guys. Because I know a lot of people like, how could you, why didn't you just film it, here or money, you know,
Yeah.
you know what money will get you there is almost triple, So Warner Brothers gives you a certain budget and you take it there, you've just now tripled your budget. And that's what you need to do. Movies
Yeah.
are expensive.
Yeah. Especially nowadays.
They're not cheap. And this wasn't even an expensive movie. This was nowhere near what movies are being, priced at. So that was it. And, I like traveling. So for me, it was, it wasn't bad, but it was a very surreal experience to go through. And it was almost kind of like, when you have like a dream and you wake up and you go, wow, that was a weird dream. It was like, man, I had this dream that I made a sequel with all the guys again. It's just bizarre. But it wasn't a dream. We were actually there doing it. And we had a lot of fun. We enjoyed ourselves. Um, but yeah, I still love the movie. I think it's great for what Pete pulled together because he really he was one of the producers of this, so he really helped out with the writing and everything and where this movie was going to go, and this really was he did this for Bob, and he wanted to do this for Bob and wanted I think he always wanted to do a sequel. It was just he needed the right story, he needed the right story to tell and the right time to do it. And this really was kind of a right time to do it because that's we are getting this whole boost of nostalgia returns and reboots and everything. So this probably was a good time to do it. Especially with Cobra Kai. Everybody loves Cobra Kai, so it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
and
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I've had like 10 people from Cobra Kai on the show talk, different people who've had various roles, but yeah,
but
great show.
I think the one thing, like, when people tell me it's like, yeah, I saw it, but it just didn't have the same, magic as the 83 version. And it was written differently than what the 83 version was because the 83 version was based on short stories. All those scenes were already pre-written by Gene Shepard and they were short stories. And so that's why when you watch the movie, a lot of those scenes can be sort of, they're self, capsulated. You can take out the flagpole scene and show it to somebody, and that's just the full scene, and they'll just enjoy watching that scene. That's why so many people, when they play the marathon, they just let it run on a continuous loop in their home, but they'll hear that scene and go, "I love this scene." And they'll go in and watch that scene, and it's like back to the turkey, back to back to making cookies, and where this movie is just, it's a one long narrative. So the first one almost was kind of written like a Seinfeld episode where each character has their different story that they go through, and then it all ties at the end. Where this one was more Wonder Years based. It was a lot. It was written more like the Wonder Years, where you still have the inner monologue, because that's what Wonder Years was. loosely kind of based on that idea. They saw a Christmas Story and said, well, we like the idea of the inner monologue describing what he's seeing and what he's going through. And so I think, that's why, there's some people, they love the story idea. I'm not going to spoil it because you haven't seen it yet. There were some, there's a moment in there that people were like, yeah, that I loved it. It got me here. I totally related to that. And but yeah, there are some people they wanted to see, those scenes, give me a new catchphrase, give me a fragile. I want something like that. So I still love the movie, I always will, just because, it was a new memory to create out of all this. And, those are the things, that you love. That it's one of the things that business can help, get you, is just those memories and, the friendships and the bonding that you create with people. So, and that's what we did. And I got to meet Vince Vaughn. How cool is that?
He's one of my favorite actors. I love
Oh,
Vince Vaughn.
he was so nice. He was so nice. I was doing a podcast with Pete and a couple of the other actors, and I show up, and Vince comes out of his room, and he just sees me, and I mean, he's huge. He's a tall, and he walks out, and it's like the way he talks is exactly like he does in the movies. He just sees me, and he's
I
like,
love that.
hey buddy, man, congratulations, man, you did a great job. And he walked up and gave me a big hug. And it's amazing to to get something like that, because yeah, I'm a huge Vince Vaughn fan,
Yeah,
and here's somebody who you admire coming up and saying thank you. you
right.
you did a great job. I'm like, okay, thank you. So that was really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, he's a great actor. He's got some phenomenal movies, and him and Peter have that nice little scene in Beginning of Four Christmases when their flight gets canceled. Peter's the whatever the flight attendant or airport guy, and
Yeah, his cameo. Yeah,
yeah,
they're good friends. They're close. So yeah, Vince was he was one of the producers on the sequel. So he was another person that made it happen. So yeah, thank you, Vince.
yeah. I'll definitely have to check it out this year. When Christmas rolls around, I'll have to watch it for sure. Well, let's touch on, as we wrap up here, some of the things you've done since then. I know you got into comedy and puppeteering, and now
Yeah,
you're producing a documentary, so we can kind of talk through a few of those things here.
we'll kind of brush through everything. So I mean, as far as getting into comedy, I mean, when I got into my teens, like 17, being a fan of like Saturday Night Live, that's the where I wanted to go, was like in sketch comedy and doing comedy. So my heroes, I was a big, Aykroyd, Belushi, John Candy, that whole, Saturday Night Live, the whole SCTV era. That was what I used to watch. So I wanted to follow in their footsteps. So I started taking classes over at the Groundlings in Los Angeles, and they're a big comedy improv troupe. In fact, a lot of big stars now have come out of Groundlings. A lot of people on Saturday Night Live and Mad TV were all, Groundlings, alumni. And so, yeah, I started doing comedy improv. I didn't get into stand-up comedy because I just didn't think that I had the chops for stand-up comedy. That's a whole different breed of comedy. And you have to be a whole different type of person to do stand-up than do comedy improv. And I did that for a while because acting was starting to slow down for me. So, and really for me, it's like, I mean, even just doing comedy isn't just acting. There's writing, there's producing, there's directing. So I just wanted to get into the world of comedy. But it was also at that time, a good friend of mine, Dan Lake, who I was with the Groundlings with, he was working with a company called Wandering Monkey, and they were all Chicago boys that moved down to LA and started this production company. So he brought me in to help build sets and everything. And at the time, they were working on a puppet show for adults. Now it's not raunchy; it's just, you know, more like Simpsons but with puppets. And I saw one of the puppets and I said, "Hey, can I see the puppet?" And they're like, "Yeah, go ahead." So I put the puppet on, and me growing up being a Henson fan and loving the Muppets, it never dawned on me at the time that this was something you can do. So I just started, messing with the puppet, and the director goes, "It's actually pretty good. Why don't you be a puppeteer?" I said, "Cool." So that kind of started puppeteering for me and just kind of fell into that. And I actually really fell in love with puppeteering. Just the idea of like it's acting, but it's not you. You have this whole new character that you can make. That's what's cool about it. And that was in the 90s, and I had some success with it. I, got to be on certain shows. I did a couple of movies with this company. I did an episode of Ninja Turtles, and they met the Power Rangers. So I was Michelangelo doing all of his facial expressions. Um, I worked on with this company, Wandering Monkey. We went to Canada to work on a Henson project, so I got to put Henson on my resume, which is pretty cool. But then that was the 90s, so the whole idea of practical effects just kind of went underway, and computers took over. So there wasn't really much need for it, and it was really hard to, find puppeteering jobs unless you moved to Canada. And I couldn't really move to Canada at the time. I'd have to change citizenship and all that. And they they were a little bit more strict about letting you come in and just work. Um, they really wanted their people to work, but that's what you do. You want your people to work, not people who come in. So, um, but I got into it, just independently and started doing, some things. But unfortunately, at the time, puppets cost money. They really do. They cost a lot of money. Over the years, the prices have come down on puppets and making them. So I'm now can't talk too much about it, but I am working on projects. So, I am, starting to build my own right now. And so, hopefully in the next year or so, I'll have something out there and you could bring me back on the show and we can talk
Yeah,
about it.
of
So,
course.
um,
I always love when there's an opportunity for follow-up.
oh, that's, it's great. I mean, I'd love to come back when, because we are working on, me and my friend Michael Giancarelli and my other friend Anthony Ciferrante are producing this new documentary called Jaws Goes to the Bahamas, and it's a documentary about Jaws for the Revenge. And so a lot of people are like, why would you want to do that? That's like the worst Jaws. It was my friend's idea, Michael. He, you know, said, I I want to make a documentary about this. He's never made a movie in his life. But he's like, he loves the movie. He's like, I would really like to do a documentary about this and find out how did it get made? What happened? So I told him, I said, I'd love to help you out with that. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And it was really just supposed to be this, kind of tongue-in-cheek idea. Like we thought it was going to be goofy, and we were just going to go around and interview, a few people and talk about it and interview some fans. And I called up a friend of mine, Anthony Ciferrante, who directed all the Sharknado movies. And I told him, I said, hey, man, we haven't hung out in a while. We haven't talked. I said, we're doing this documentary. I'd love to interview you for it. And even he was like, why? I go, because you're the Sharknado guy. We have to have the Sharknado guy on here. And he's like, for you, I'll do it. And then as he started talking about it and he started talking to Michael, they started to, you know, come together. And Anthony was like, I really like this idea. I want to be more a part of it. And so as soon as we brought Anthony in, it kind of we went from being this sort of tongue-in-cheek, almost kind of, spinal tap, mockumentary, and started taking it more seriously. And now we're starting to get people are starting to come out of the woodwork who worked on the movie. We interviewed Lance Guest. He played Michael Brody in the movie. Pete Romano, who did all the underwater photography. we do have a line of people that we're going to be interviewing. We just can't say who right now because we want to make sure that we have that they're some big names. Like I was even amazed. There's one person who I'm so excited that if he does, I'm so amazed that I get to meet this person and talk to him. I just can't say their name right now because we have to make
Right.
sure we have them for sure. But we are doing crowdfunding for it on Indiegogo.com. So go there. Jaws goes to the Bahamas. You know, we reached our first goal. Now we just reached our second goal. So we get to continue on and raise money for it. And yeah, because movies need money. You have to feed them, and that they only eat money if you want them to live. They don't like promises or passion. Can't just tell them I'm passionate about making this. They're like, I need money. Feed me, Seymour. So that's what it is.
Well, now I have to watch the rest of Jaws. I've seen the original, but I never watched past the original. So now I have to watch the others so then I can watch your documentary when it comes out.
Yeah. So, and it's not going to come out until 2027 because
Oh,
that's going
good. I've got time.
to be so we might make another Christmas story in the meantime. Who knows? So, um, but yeah, the reason why is because that's going to be the 40th anniversary of Jaws the Revenge. So there will probably be some buzz about it once, because we just had the 50th anniversary of the first one.
Yeah.
Martha's Vineyard, they do a whole festival down there for Jaws. So we're hoping that in 2027, for the 40th anniversary, that they're going to want to do something. So it'd be nice to play the movie down there once it's all finished and everything. And we're we're excited about it because, like I said, it is actually turning into a legitimate documentary now, as opposed to just being, a funny little thing. And I'm glad that it's working that way. And Anthony and Michael are doing they're doing most of the work. I'm there to help out and everything. And you know, like the last time we shot, we were interviewing, but I was like, babe, I would go get coffee for everybody. So, like associate producer, still haven't really found what my title is. It is producer because I'm paying for some things, but I'm just having a blast doing it. So,
Yeah. I think it's cool that it kind of started on a whim and
mhm.
now it's growing into, like you said, a serious documentary. I mean, it just shows you if you have an idea, you never know what can come of it.
Exactly. And I knew, like I said, I mean, I'm a Jaws fan, but I've never been like a huge fan. But, Mike is, a really good friend of mine. He was one of those guys, was a fan of A Christmas Story and turned out to be one of my best friends. And I knew that he wanted to do this. And I said, yeah, I want to help you out. So whatever you need from me, you have my sword, you have my axe, you have my bow. That's how he was Frodo and he decided, he had to go bring the ring and, we all kind of lended our talents, to help him out. So
Yeah. Well, that's definitely cool. Yeah, you'll definitely have to come back on when you can talk more about your puppeteering and when you get more progress on the documentary, and we can definitely dive
yeah,
into some of that stuff. I love when I have a few other people I've had on the podcast who said, like, yeah, I've got stuff I'm working on right now. Some musicians, they're like, when we get this out, or like maybe they're writing their autobiography right now. They're like, when I get it out, like, I'd love to come back on and talk about it. And I think that's awesome. That's what I
yeah.
love about this podcast. You develop connections, relationships with people, networking, and it's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these are probably like one of the reasons why I like doing them is, you might, you'll do this and then somebody might email you later and say, hey, I saw you on that podcast. And it's like, cool. And that's why you do these. It's a
Yeah.
good way to just, talk and have fun, but yet, let people know what you're doing. Because
Right.
everybody, what are you doing now? It's like sometimes I'm not really doing much of anything. Um, but yeah, now I got something to do, and these are just fun to do. I enjoy doing them. So I got another
Yeah.
one, and everything. So I'll be probably talking about the same stuff as well. So
Well, I appreciate you coming on and diving into your career and A Christmas Story. And yeah, look forward to, your stuff coming out here in the future. It sounds like some neat stuff. But yeah, really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem.
Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes soon.